Now, the organizers invited me to be the juror of this exhibit, and I said yes. By now I've learned that being a juror is really good for me. I learn a lot. And the first time I was asked to be a juror, about 20 years ago, a group asked me to be the juror for an exhibit, and I thought about it. I said, "Wow, that's cool. They think I must know something." And then I thought, "No, no, no, I can't do that. I can't judge whose work is better than whose. I can't do that." And then, so I said, "No, I'm not doing it. I can't do it." And they said, "Well, okay, what about if we give you your own gallery and you can exhibit your work in that gallery during the show?" And so I said yes. And then from then, it's just been a learning process. The main thing that I already knew is that just because I'm the juror, it doesn't mean I know what is best. I make quilts and I look at quilts. My training, I have a university degree in literature. I have an advanced degree in geography. So I would say my main training was just being a quilter and looking at quilts for, I'm sorry to say and admit, 50 years. I did teach school for a while. I teach writing, and I did spend a lot of time practicing how to evaluate objectively student writing, making lists and trying to decide what am I looking for? What should they be doing in this writing? One of the things I need to do for a quilt exhibit is to set aside my particular preferences. You can't be making quilts as long as I have and not create a whole lot of opinions. And those opinions aren't always relevant to an exhibit. They're relevant to my work. So every time I'm on a jury or the only juror, I will make a list. I write it down. I try to get the words, kind of refine the meaning of the words and write what I think is important. Every time I write it, it's a little different. I figure it's just like the quilt. The next quilt will be better. The next list will be better. You can see these in the statement that I wrote that's in the catalog. I also have a copy of it on my website. These are the 5 things I settled on for this exhibit. Does it attract me? Does it make me want to look at it? Are the elements working together? Do they make me think something? Is the theme of shifting tides, is it presented in a complex way? Is it presented in an interesting way? And does what I see in the quilt have anything to do with what the person wrote about it? Maybe it relates to the title. Sometimes the titles are informative, they're a big clue, and sometimes they don't tell you anything really. And to me, very important is, can you tell a person made this? Is it actually visibly made, as opposed to, for example, being manufactured? And this may take, maybe in terms of marks, might be dye marks, might be stitch marks, might be actual pencil marks before that didn't, it might be just the way the person arranged the elements of the design, that it doesn't look like exactly like that you looking out there at the real world. The person has rearranged, they put the tree in a different place, and so on. These are the things that I think are important. And these are the things I decided I was going to try to judge which quilts to put in the show. However, the criteria are not purely objective. I'm trying to be objective, but they can be understood in a lot of different ways. You're sitting there, and what do you think would engage you? It could be entirely different than what engages me. Integrating the design elements. What if you like everything to be scattered and different and have a lot of variety? What if that is a style that you like? Complexity. I've talked about complexity with my other quilting friends, and a lot of us are saying things like, I would like to make it simple. I would like to make it bold instead of complex, but we all get involved in complexity. How about your composition and your statement? Do they go together? Maybe that doesn't matter to you as a juror. Maybe the words don't matter at all. Maybe what really matters is what you see visually. And then, of course, the hand of the artist. Do you care how much do you care about the texture and the stitching and the rearrangement of the parts? So anyway, I just want to point out to you that I have made an objective list that isn't objective at all. One thing I did have to do after I had to decide what was important to me as a juror, I had to realize that I'm looking at a bunch of quilts and I had to represent basically the Pacific Rim, the range of habitats, the range of issues, and where in the range of problems that we have in our Pacific ecosystem. I also decided that after I looked at all the quilts, there were so many different ways to make a quilt shown in this exhibit. Different approaches of designing, different construction techniques. So as I was looking at them and choosing, I had a lot of choices, and I thought that I could also incorporate attention to a range of these things in my choices. So after I selected all the quilts, then I looked at the linear foot requirement of the galleries. They told me how many I could choose approximately, but then I had to add up the width of all the quilts and see how much it comes out to, because they were going to be shown in different galleries in different places, and they had decided on a maximum number. But this could make a couple of quilts difference. And what if I thought a quilt should be in it, but there were too many linear feet? Or what if I could put a couple more in? So this is something to consider. There were about 150, you all know this, about 159 quilts I looked at. And about 40 to 45 is what they recommended I choose, not knowing which ones and how big they all are. I had forgotten this. I was thinking maybe I had to really eliminate maybe about half. I had to eliminate about 75% of the quilts. And all of them could have been in the show, really, truly. Numbers mean nothing. You can rate something 5, 4, 3, or 10, 9, 8. What if you rate them all? Let's say you've got 3, you rate a whole bunch of them as 3s. Well, what if you need 3 more quilts and you've got 15 3s? It's really an interesting issue. My main point is that each of these quilts is made by a person. A person is behind this quilt. It's not just an art object. And actually, none of them deserve a 0. But which ones are really for sure a 5? That's not easy either. So numbers fail us, and all my quantification and all my trying to get objective is really just an exercise in start looking at them and thinking about them. So this is a close-up of a quilt. I'm going to show you some more quilts here. And as I was making the wave quilts, some of them morphed into sunset quilts. And since I have been making quilts for so long, I have a lot of quilts. And I've decided to invite you to be the juror. I want you to pick. I'm going to use my quilts. I picked 12 of my sunset quilts. I probably have, if you include sunset and sky themed quilts, I probably have about 40 quilts. I picked 12, and I want you to find 5 for the exhibit called At Sunset. So first you're going to look at the quilts and make a tentative list on your piece of paper. Yes and maybe. Number 1, yes. Number 2, maybe. Number 3, no, and so on. And then we will go through them again, and you get to pick 5. And then we're going to do our final size considerations, and so on, before we actually have our final poll of which quilts get to be in this exhibit. Okay, so before I start showing them, just review in your own mind, just go back and think to yourself, just briefly, what are your biases about quilts? What do you think is important about a quilt? What do you like? What do you hate about some quilts? And do you have any really kind of objective criteria that you think is important in a good quilt? And now we're talking about sunset, right? At sunset. So you can look at these quilts and say, is this something to do with the sunset? Do I like how it's related to the theme? It doesn't have to be bullet on, hammering you about what it's about, but it could be related in some way. And then take a look at the design and construction. You might like all the certain ones that are made the same way. That's up to you. Or you may want to choose a range of different kinds and styles of construction. And then we're going to figure out, you get to pick 5 to start with, and then we'll see if they fit on the wall. Okay, I'm going to start, and I'm going to, you're going to see an overall quilt and a detail. And they have numbers and titles. And I'm going to show them to you somewhat slowly. And then I'm going to show you a thumbnail of all of them together. And you can pick your yeses and your maybes in this round, okay? All right, you ready? Are you ready, Rebecca? Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
I'm going to leave this screen up for a little while. I'll look at my clock, maybe give it a full minute. Does that sound good?
Yeah, so what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to go ahead and two sections of this, we're going to take a poll. So right now I'm going to be launching a poll, and you all have an opportunity to let us know how many of those were maybes.
Rebecca, when you launch the poll, it covers up the pictures.
Oh, are you able to move that window at all from side to side?
I was able to move mine.
You
Okay.
might be able to click on that window and slide it from side to side, Carrie. Sorry about that.
Okay.
We'll just take another couple minutes to see how many people had maybes. I've got about half of you have answered so far. Okay. Team. Got about half of you have answered. Give it another like 10 seconds, maybe 5 seconds. Let's say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. And very, very interesting results on that. And nobody knew which 5 they wanted to pick off their bat. Almost everyone, it was about even. 50%, 51% said 1 to 5 maybes. 47% of our voters said that it was 6 to 9. So almost all of them were maybes. And 2%, one person said they were all contenders, basically.
Okay, all right. So we're going to look at them all again. Let's see, where am I on this?
Go ahead.
I see the results now. Yeah, that makes it a little more clear to understand.
All right.
Okay.
So,
all right, so I'm going to go to the next slide. So we got our results here. I'm going to go through all over again, about the same speed. And you're going to pick out 5. Okay, I want you to think about what is important, not just the things you love. Think of your objective criteria and pick 5, put them on your piece of paper from these 12 thumbnails.
I can't imagine doing this with over 100 quilts, Anne, when you were doing shifting tides.
150, 60.
150, my goodness.
How about Quilt National was over 1,000. You think that's enough time?
Yeah, so is this the point at which you're ready for me to launch?
No, no, not yet.
That's right.
Right, because the reason you have to have criteria and the reason you have to have a list of maybes is because the exhibit may have some requirements that change your choices. I have juried for exhibits that told us afterwards that a quilt was disqualified for some reason or another. Exhibits have rules. Sometimes they tell you that really we shouldn't have more than one quilt per artist. There would be lots of different reasons. Maybe they'll change the size of the gallery, but you need to have some choices at the end. The quilts that you thought maybe you should be in the show, you don't really know which ones. And in this case, the At Sunset exhibit has a linear foot limit. And what you didn't really realize when you were looking at the pictures is that number 7 is more than twice as big as the other quilts. So if you have number 7 in your list, you have 2 choices. You can keep it and take out one other quilt, or you can remove it and add 2 quilts. Or if you did not choose it, add a quilt. So in fact, you might have 4 quilts, you might have 5 quilts, or you might have 6 quilts, depending on which ones you chose. So now is your final choice, and you're going to say yes to your finals. Some of you are going to have 4 yeses, some of you are going to have 5 yeses. And Rebecca is going to go through the list and ask you yes or no on each quilt number. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to put up 2 polls. I'm going to put up one for the first 10 because I can only do 10 questions at a time. And then after I've given everybody a chance to answer those, I'll put up the last 2. So for each quilt, you're just going to say yes or no if that was one of the ones you picked or not. No one has voted yet.
Well, we didn't, this is the hard part. But, as a juror, you have a deadline. You have to do it by a certain date.
Yeah, so your deadline, folks, is going to be maybe another minute.
Okay.
Only got a few votes in so far.
I'm trying to hit submit and nothing's happening.
Maybe you have to scroll through all of them first.
You definitely need to scroll through to the bottom for all 10.
Move
Thank
down.
you. I seem to be the technical Dumbo today.
No. This is, I think that this is also new for everyone. We haven't used the polling feature very often. So, once again, thank you all for being flexible and trying new things.
That's the point, isn't it?
Yes. This is going to be fun. I can record all of the answers. And yes, this is only going to be the first 10. I will give you the chance to vote for 11 and 12 in just a moment, folks.
Rebecca, it took it away when I had 2 left to vote on.
I am sorry, and I don't know how to make it go back for you.
Oh, okay. Well, I just put it in the chat what I chose.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
All right, I'm going to give everybody about 10 more seconds to put in their votes for these, just because we want to go ahead and move on. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I'm gonna share the results for these first 10 just so I can record this, and then I'll go on to that second 2 quilts. So a lot of people on that one, 51, 49, 20.
You writing them down for me, Rebecca?
I am.
Good.
Twenty-three, 22 to 28. All right, let me go ahead and move on to those last 2 so that everyone can answer whether or not they chose those last 2. We'll go through this one pretty quickly. Everyone's really able to get those votes in fast. Thanks, guys. Just give this maybe 10 more seconds or so to get those last couple votes in. Looks like just getting a couple more votes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there's the results on those last 2. Okay, so I will go ahead and take that down. And it looks like I can even go back to the first results and share those back up again. So it looks like the ones that were picked by a lot of people were picking number 4, number 5, and 6. Not many people selected to choose number 7, which was going to force them to eliminate a work. Most people decided to go ahead and let that one go. Number 9 was selected by a lot of people, as was number 10. And I can go back to the results for that second, those numbers 11 and 10. Number 12 was picked by about half of the folks. So if I go through,
Well, that works out. There's 6 quilts.
if we get to choose 6 quilts, those
Yeah.
quilts in the exhibition based on everyone's choices would be 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, and 12. So the Visions Art Museum communal choice for the exhibition is quilts 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, and 12, which is almost exactly what I personally chose. It's
Awesome.
off by only 1, and that 1 was my other maybe.
Ah,
How
yes.
interesting is that?
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate hearing feedback. Of course, I can't be the judge of these quilts because I made them. And some of the history, some of the memories, some of the reasons I made them, they're way too complicated. Anyway, we are basically a lot of us on the same page. I wanted to just show my last slide related to the ocean, related to sunsets, related to waves. We're looking out at the oil derricks in the Pacific Ocean here. And, I feel like the next generation beyond me and the one beyond that, they're working on this now. There is hope. They're busy, they're concerned. I found this website called theoceancleanup.com. And it's a tremendous website. It covers the whole world. But there was one video on it. It's older. It was when the project began, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And it is a whole bunch of young people getting all their equipment together, all their technology together. They're trying to figure out, and they're going to take a survey of the garbage patch, and they're going to try to figure out what's in it, how big is it, how much does it weigh, what kind of chemicals in it, how can they clean it up, what can they do with it when they clean it up, what can they make out of it. It's a huge project, and it gives me all kinds of hope. Anyway, that is what I have to say about shifting tides. I imagine there might be some questions.
Yes, Lynn Tooby has a question for you. Anyone else, if you want to use that raise hand function, go ahead and raise your hands and we'll call on people.
Anne, have you ever been part of a 2 or 3 person jury?
Yes,
So
yes, I have.
how does that work? You each make your lists and then you somehow get together and talk it out?
Well, everyone is different. I've been on a jury with 2, and I've been on juries with 3. Usually, the first thing they tell you to do is on your own, go through and eliminate the ones that are not going to be considered for yourself. And if all 3 jurors do that, then you don't have to look at so many, right? But then, and of course, during the pandemic, it's different, but basically, every single exhibition has a different process. They tell you what to do. They have different software. Every time I've done it, it's been different software. Some of it is cumbersome. Some of it is, you can't look back easily. You can't make a list easily. Sometimes we used to go meet and look at slides. We looked at slides. Can you believe that? I mean, most of my quilts I'm showing you are pre-digital on the old work. But you meet,
Actually,
pardon? Okay, all right. So so every single one is different. The ones I like is when we can meet in person and talk face to face, looking at the work. We never get to look at the quilts in person, hardly. But just looking at the pictures and talking helps. But usually that's way late in the process and people have already eliminated. So in a jury of 3, you would have somebody's eliminated one entirely that you like a lot. And if you have to add up numbers, so the first time I did a really big exhibit that I made all maybes. So I didn't eliminate any. And then we had, they had to all be considered and reconsidered and so on. Anyway, it's all different.
And I believe, I'm sure there's many questions about both your artwork and your jurying process. There was a question earlier about your process. When you were talking about your art, you talked a lot about sort of when you paint, it's very intuitive and you just go with what the flow compared to contrasting many of the artists who had a plan in mind, and they were hoping you could talk about your planning process a little more.
Okay, all righty. Every quilt is different. Every single quilt. If I have an idea, the idea is what determines how I build it. So in the case of the wave quilts, it's starting out with its concept as circular motion, but in a lot of my quilts, I have a book about this. I'm going to show you this.
Sorry, I took your screen share down.
Oh, you did. Should I share it again?
You can go ahead and put that right back up. Yeah.
Okay. In the book, I've been building a series for 10 years. I've made over 40 quilts in the series. The only thing similar about the quilts is that most of them are 7 feet tall. And every single one is constructed according to the idea, not according to a way to work. So in some cases, they're whole cloth, dyed the whole thing. And in some cases, like the one on the cover here, it is constructed of pieces and layers that I have dyed and created and put together according to an actual drawing. I've literally drawn this quilt 7 feet tall, about 4 feet wide on paper. So I really can't say, except it depends on the quilt and the idea.
Thank you. you so much. And if anyone else has any questions, we'll go ahead and just take a few more minutes. I know we're getting a little past 12 o'clock. And would you like I hope I didn't miss this while I was doing some chatting or something, but what are your thoughts on weighing those criteria? You give 5 criteria. Is one ever more important than the others, or are they all equal?
Well, this is where you get into, numbers. I used to do this when I'm grading compositions for high school students, Well, the most important thing is that you do this. So that's worth 50% of the grade. And then the next thing is you need to have done this, and that's worth 20% and 10% and so on. And then you can score each of those segments. I mean, that's a way to grade something. But I found over the years, I could do that with the quilts. I could pick one thing or another. But in fact, it comes, you know what? You could do all this arithmetic and come out with the same answer, maybe. I don't weight them. I just try to keep them in my mind, keep them in my consciousness, because numerically dealing with this doesn't work for me.
Do you look through all of the images first and then go back and, for example, read the artist statements, or do you read the artist statements at the same time as you look through each of the pieces of artwork the first time?
Well, I tend to weight what it looks like more than what the words say. So I definitely look at them all first. I look at the whole thing and I look at the detail. And I go through them all pretty quickly. I do this when I go in a museum. I do this when I go in an art gallery. I stand back and I turn my head and I look all around and I walk through the galleries and then I go back. But I am definitely, I mean, we could say whatever we want in the words, but it's the artwork really that has the impact.
And I'll have one more question in the chat and then we'll go ahead and close up. One person wanted to know if you have any exhibits coming up for that Sierra Nevada series.
I'm working on it. I have nothing, well, I have some of them out there. There's 2 of them in the Art and Embassy program, and I have a couple going to a museum coming up in the summer. But as a whole series of quilts, I am looking for a venue that can take 35 7-foot tall quilts. There aren't that many around. I could give them half of them or part of them, but I'd really like to see them all together. If anybody knows someone, just let me know.
Our museum itself is pretty limited on those tall walls, unfortunately. Yeah. And this has been thrilling, so much fun. And I've got lots of messages in the chat from folks that I will be sending you so you can see everyone who's had so much fun with this jurying exercise. And everyone can look out in that follow-up email that we always send out. We've got a lot of links that Anne has sent us to send on to you folks.